Well, we are a synchronized swimming team that is committed to Black liberation, to body positivity in athletics, to
Queer
visibility, and equity in the aquatic arts.
We do sort of have these four things that drive us both in the water and out of the water. And I think it is linked to lots of other struggles, and we didn't invent what is driving us, but we are building on an ancestral legacy of people who have been in the struggle for a long time. And we talk a lot about bringing joy, and that the path, I think, of the Sirens in many ways is a healing journey for all of us as we continue to find our way through this complicated world. Then we did quickly come to Subversive Sirens as our name, in part because we wanted to have something that was like mermaid siren, something about beings in the water moving. And the idea of being subversive really felt true and authentic for what and who we are. Susie and I are both artists and activists. We are trying to actually change and or shift the ways that we think about systems of oppression, the ways that we live in the world. And so oftentimes that means we have to subvert and really think about deconstructing narratives and ideas that people have centered as normal. The sirens often also call people to their death, actually, like sirens that scream. We are calling to its death white supremacy, we are calling to its death patriarchy, we are calling to its death homophobia, we are calling to its death fat phobia, we are calling to its death a lot of narratives about how people should be in the world as opposed to authentically accepting people for who they are and want to be. To be honest, as a Black lesbian, I have to carve my own space anyway. And frankly, as a fat person, I've been fat my whole life, and I've also been an athlete for the most part my whole life, a dancer, a performer. So it didn't feel like a new step to say I'm going to step into something because it feels right to me, not because you as judge, jury, creator, even architect of something, you may have made it for someone else. If I find a place for me, I'm going to carve it for myself.
And the reality is that this sport has a real problem still in terms of class, race, gender, just equity in general, intersecting issues of imbalance in terms of equity. And there doesn't really seem to be too much, and so that's definitely why one of our charges is to try to help figure out different ways, or at least bring visibility to that aspect.
It was this hyper femininity too that didn't allow, Esther Williams was very, very talented, but I think in terms of what we actually see her do on camera, it's really, really narrow and hyper feminine. And I think that we knew that existed, and I think also being Subversive Sirens, we knew that wasn't actually about our charge. We later also learned, once we started training, that there was this old school that was really grounded in, for example, there's something called the ballet leg, which when you practice it, these are your 2 feet, and you draw one leg in at the bent knee, and then this leg goes up. It's called a ballet leg. And generally, old school, you would skull head first going in the pool, and you would do this. So Susie and I are practicing early on, and we're sculling feet first and doing a ballet leg, and then we're sculling head first and we're doing it in different directions. And someone was like, "Oh no, you don't go feet first." And
we're like,
why not?
What is that?
Yeah.
So I think synchro has changed a bit. If you see synchro in the Olympics, it's very forceful. It's very strong now, the way that you see it. I mean, it's still not as diverse, unfortunately, in the International Olympics. It's ridiculous. There were some incredible performers that
are excluded
doing today that are completely excluded because they're men, because they're trans. It's ridiculous.
Yes, gay liberation is amazing, and there's lots of strides, but it's still hard to be gay in the world. Let's keep it queer and clear.
Clear and clear.
And I think about, I don't want to talk about other people's stories, but I will say synchro has a long way to go in terms of that. There is really shitty language around how we talk about what we do that is gendered. Our trans siblings are not well taken care of in spaces like pools at all.
Right.
So there is a lot of work to be done. Early on when we would swim, people would sometimes say stupid shit. Yep. Or give me stupid looks. And Susie would use her white privilege to check that person, to run interference, to be the barrier between me and some kind of traumatic trigger. And she would do that regularly, whether that was in the pool, whether that was in the locker room, whether that was at the front desk. And she would do it again and again and again. And she would ask me, she would check in with me, are you okay? Sometimes I would say yes, please. Sometimes I would say no. But that is a role that white people need to play in the struggle.
That's right.
And she exemplifies what that looks like, because it's not easy. It's not easy to say, do I need to check that person who just said that stupid shit to you? That was a microaggression. Are you okay? And that those things become more important than how pointed were your toes. And so we met with the executive director of the YMCA Blaisdell, which is a YMCA located in South Minneapolis that really,
neighborhood Y.
which is her neighborhood Y, and has now become sort of our home base. And they were really interested in how do they promote healthy living for a broad range of community members, people of color, people of different sizes, people of different races and ethnicities and religious beliefs, right? So, you know, they had already done programming where there was a women's only swim to create more space for some of the, particularly I would say our Muslim brothers and sisters in the community, to make sure that the pool felt like a safe space for them. So they had already been entertaining this idea, and when we came and talked to them, they were like, oh, you fit so well inside of our charge about how do we be grounded in the community that is more reflective of who we are. And so when we told them about who and what we are, they welcomed us in and worked really hard to create space. I do, not to be gloomy, but I do also feel like the community that we have created has also been a kind of insulation from maybe ideas outside. Like, for example, there is a pool in Minnesota that is deep on both sides, and we don't have access to that. We can't rent that pool. We don't, and so
it's at the university.
It's at the university, and it's like off limits.
You know, I'm a community organizer, and so a lot of my work for justice and with communities is like outward. And I needed something that was like inward, right? That was like investing in myself, to give myself permission to take time to work on something that fed my spirit, my creative brain, and everything.
And your body.
And my body.
Yeah.
My body, something that would put me in my body, like Tana talks about. I really needed that. So this has been amazing. Not to mention just like the solidarity, you know, between.
I was like, wait, is there?
It is. It's been really awesome. You know, we don't always get that kind of solidarity in our jobs or in other places, and so it's nice to have that between each other. Right?
As activists, we go out, we march, we do all this stuff, and we be at it, and then we don't do things like
we don't
eat.
care for ourselves.
We don't sleep. We don't exercise. We don't do those things, and so like we hold each other lovingly accountable to like take care of ourselves.
Yes. And we do that on the team too. It's very important.
Yeah. Some of us are better than others.
The self-care of being on this team and getting refreshed and filled up spiritually and emotionally in the water, that is allowing us to do things out of the water in different ways than I think I did them before. And so, you know, once you're getting nourishment, you're like, oh, I like that nourishment. I like how this feels. I love feeling this good in my body and with this community. So I think for me, that's what it has been.
So when I have like a rough day, I like come to my team and I'm like, y'all, I need y'all to come around me today. Like I have been getting, you know, all of this like patriarchy and all of this like, you don't know what you're doing, little girl, blah, 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 like all of this crap. And I need you to come around me and I need to fucking swim. Like,
swim it out.
That shit out.
Swim that shit off. Some of this is spoken in terms of how we support each other, and some of it is by swimming, obviously, but just being in the water. Water transmits information between the objects that are in it. And so we are the objects in the water transmitting information back and forth. A lot of it not having to say a word.
Yeah. We're literally lifting each other, right? Like literally.
Love you.
Love you.
Love you.
Yeah.
So I think it will be interesting for the team to continue training, not for a competition, but to figure out, and we've had some beginning conversations about what does that look like, to set some sort of date in terms of a performance that is part ritual, part performance for our community, and come up with routine for that and train to that as opposed to training for a competition. Not that competition isn't great and it's a part of the sport, but I would like to have there be something in addition.
Our communities have really come together around us, and they're so excited about how they can be more involved. So we've talked about like a club or other kinds of events or things that we can do to like spread this and to really let people engage at different levels.
I think there's lots of different ways to participate in the journey, and I think that that's been cool for us to discover even amongst ourselves. Like we have different levels of swimming, we have different flexibilities, different strengths, different body types. Our community, same thing. People are doing different things, sort of even outside of the water, to support the journey of what we're doing.
Right.
And I think that the diversity, and I mean that in terms of how people participate in the story, is really also helping to support driving forward.
I think too, like coming together with the masters, like, you know, some of them are from like an older school, but like us coming into their community, we're like showing them like, you know, most of us are activists, we're artists, we're queer, we're like, you know, having these events with all of our friends and communities and like bringing these communities together and like saying, look, like we can reinvigorate the sport and change like what it's supposed to be about, you know?
And most of us are freelancers. I think actually all of us are freelancers. So that means we work all the time. So anytime we're in the pool means it's not an hour that we're billing as work.
Right.
So that the economic side of it is actually very real. And